In case I didn't have enough projects, I've been working on this bus for the last few months. It's a 1976 Toyota Coaster that's been sitting in my backyard since it was retired off the road about 7 years ago. Keeping the old girl off the road has been primarily due to issues surrounding an old fuel pump, a shoddy master cylinder, a dodgy rebuild done to one of the drum brakes, and heaps of rust. Well, to be honest, the list goes on. To start off with, I grabbed out of the shed a cheapy boat fuel pump that I could mount not far from the tank. For now, I just used some fuel line I had lying around, although I plan to replace most of the hose in the rest of the system as it's in quite bad condition. This bus was retrofitted at some point in the 90s with a Holden 186 red motor, and now that it was getting fuel, it started straight up. To think that this was an upgrade is interesting because it's still pretty gutless. I wasn't able to move the bus yet though, because the master cylinder for the brake and the one for the clutch both use the same reservoir, and I didn't want to fill it up with fluid that would just end up draining on the floor when I go to fix the brakes. After looking online, I quickly realised that there's no way I'd be able to get a new master cylinder identical to the original without calling up Toyota themselves. Thankfully, a place down in Adelaide called Precision Brakes makes up their kits just to replace the seals inside the cylinder as long as the bore is not too badly pitted. $45 later, I had the seals, and the time required to take the cylinder out and attempt some repairs. It took me a fair while to disassemble it. I'm not a professional after all. One piston needed a fair bit of persuading to be removed, and the other one was being held in by a sneaky little screw that I hadn't even noticed. Eventually though, everything was renewed and ready to put back in the vehicle. I didn't bench bleed the master cylinder, but once it was in the vehicle, it ended up bleeding up alright. At this point, the old coaster was ready for a quick test drive. Unfortunately, as soon as we started moving, we realised things still weren't right. It took a little bit of back and forward movement until most of the brakes freed up. The engine felt like it was running on only a couple of cylinders, and it took a fair while to work out what was wrong. The carburetor ended up being the main issue, as the choke butterfly had jammed itself mostly shut. The choke pull cord from the dash still confused us though, as it was actually moving a idle up of sorts that made it seem like it was still doing something. With that, and a new set of spark plugs, just because why the hell not, it was now time to work out why we were still having problems with the front right brake drum. Shortly after we parked up the vehicle all those years ago, some new brake pads were put into the front right drum, as the old ones were worn down. Unfortunately, they didn't quite fit right, and with the fuel pump death, they had never been tested. It took a bit of persuasion to get the drum off, as it was hanging onto the pads. The pads that were put in had metal tabs that went into the two slave cylinders within the drum. These tabs were slightly too long, so although the curvature and the rest of the measurements of the pads were correct, they were pushing on the drum even when the pedal wasn't depressed. It was within a margin of error that with a bit of shoving things went together, but it wasn't how it was meant to be. It took me a while to realise that was the problem, to be completely honest, and I ended up having the drum off twice, but in the end, a little grinding was all that needed to be done. With everything now running fairly smoothly, the next weekend we decided to take the coaster on a one-night journey as a shakedown trip. The carby spat out a little piece of rubber, causing the accelerator pump to just squirt fuel into the engine bay, but with a screw wrapped in electrical tape and shoved into the hole, we managed to make it home. Although everything's pretty dodgy, I am fairly happy with how the bus turned out and the fact that I could get it running. The next time I work on it, I'm going to have to try and fix the rust, because a lot of the interior has been damaged by water seeping in through the holes in the roof. The floor pan by the driver's feet is also pretty bad, so in a future video you're going to be seeing a lot more of the coaster. I even used the bus to pick up a new project, in case I didn't have enough projects already. Thanks for watching.